the channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live podcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back with you on this beautiful Wednesday night / evening. So I say good morning to you, good evening, good afternoon, depending on wherever it is on the side of the globe that you're joining us from. Yeah, it's been an okay day, really. Not so much interesting to break for you, but yeah, we are yet back again to discuss the latest stuff from the world of football. Italy never qualified for the World Cup. That is Yukesh joining us from Johannesburg, South Africa. How are you, Yukesh, my brother? How are you doing? Yeah, it is indeed true that for the third time in the row, the Azzurri missed out on qualifying for the World Cup, which is not a very, very good sign. Not for any of those players, not for the head coach in Gennaro Gattuso, not for Italian football, really, because it will be easy for us to say, oh, it's this player's fault, it's that head coach's fault for not guiding them through. But let's be honest, that has been the story for Italian football. And when you look back at the last two editions during which they had been part of the World Cup, you have to go back to 2010, the 2010 edition, after which they were knocked out at the group stages, and in that year they finished bottom of the group stages. So that was very, very significant. So I mean, ever since then, they had Roberto Baggio draft a 900-page document trying to draw insights on how to salvage, on how to salvage Italian football, on how to bring it back to its, a greater heights. Then subsequent to that, they qualified for the 2014 World Cup, still were eliminated at the group stages, and it never really, really worked out. So it's been that sort of trend of things as far as things go. But for those of you that care to remember, in 2010, even France were in the same boat. But because in the 2010 World Cup, they finished bottom of Group A because they were in the same group with the hosts, South Africa, Mexico, and Uruguay. And whereas on the other side, Italy were in Group F. Yes, Italy were in Group F with Paraguay, Slovakia, and New Zealand. And yet, ordinarily, you would be thinking, yeah, those are sort of a bit smaller countries or with lesser pedigree in as far as World Cup football is concerned. Italy should be able to get past the group stages. Well, they did not come out of the group. They did not make it out of the group. So, in fact, they only had 2 draws and 1 loss. Even so, based on their pedigree, and because we're talking about 4-time champions of the world, really, so we cannot take them lightly. They are one of the big 5 nations because it's Brazil have won it 5 times, Germany and Italy have won it 4 times, Argentina have won it 3 times, and then you have France who have won it 2 times. Now, how come France have managed to bounce back from that sort of performance in 2010, where they did not qualify out of the group? They finished bottom of their group, and now, fast forward, 8 years later, they were being champions. They were being champions they were being champions of the world in 2018. So, what is it that the French have done that Italy cannot do? So, I mean, questions have to ask. Sorry, questions ought to be asked of these respective nations that partook in in that edition, and things did not work out well for them. I've given you the example of Germany. Germany went back to the drawing board and realized this is not working. We need to find a new formula, and they managed to work out something. And by 2014, they were winning the World Cup. So they start. So hi Guna, good to have you back on the channel. I hope you're doing well. Gunman, and not Guna, Gunman. So Yukesh says, you remind me of my father. Whenever I join you, you welcome me, ask how I am, ask how my day was. Your football knowledge is bloody insane. Many man, you're already becoming a role model for me. Thank you so much for the words of kindness. Who am I to be even to be remotely be put in the same sentence with your father? So you say, am I correct in saying that Tottenham's new head coach De Zerbi was at Brighton, right? Yes, he was at Brighton. He joined them in September 2022 when Graham Potter had left the club to join Chelsea. So he joined them from Shakhtar Donetsk, and he took charge of the club for I think about what was it 1 year and 9 months, guiding them to a 6th place finish in their debut in his debut season, even though he found them in 4th place. Not that it was bad. So you're right about that. You say, I heard if you finish 3rd in this World Cup, you may still go through. Thoughts on this? Yukesh says, I liked as usual, my man. Thank you. So we've sort of got off to a speedy and interesting start. But yeah, let's stay with Italian football briefly before we get to Roberto De Zerbi, because he is part of our menu since he's arrived at Tottenham Hotspur. So the idea for what German did was to go back to the drawing board and said, okay, we need to sort of build this thing up. And for them, I think that realization comes after the 2002 World Cup when they lose to Brazil. That's when, that was sort of, for lack of a better word, their rude awakening. And yet they had not done bad in that tournament. They had reached the final, but they had lost the final to Brazil. Nonetheless, they thought they had homework to do. And then they hosted the 2006 edition, which eventually they could not win because it then went to the Azzurri, that's Italy, winning the final on penalties, beating France in the final. So, and then when they went to the drawing board, they looked inwards. They said, we must take care of our business. And they looked on how to restructure their football right from the academies. How do we get players playing the same style of football? How do we get coaches training or teaching the same style of football? So those are the kinds of things that they sort of focused on. And fast forward, by 2014, they were being crowned world champions, winning the World Cup in Brazil. You remember, they sort of embarrassed, they humiliated Brazil at the 2014 World Cup in the semifinals, beating them by 7-1. That's how good they were. You remember that team of Miroslav Klose, Mario Götze, they had Thomas Muller, of course, Mesut Ozil was in that team. You had Pamet Saka in that team. Andrea Schuler, for those of you that remember him for his stints at teams like Chelsea and Fulham in the Premier League. Of course, he did also play for Schalke 04 at some point. You had that cohort of players, that then won the World Cup. So the question is, why can't Italy pick a leaf? And like I said, for those of you that were part of our morning broadcast, because it is a topic that we did touch on pertaining or regarding Italy, and we did draw reference to the 900-page document, although we picked out an excerpt in terms of the key talking points for what he laid on table in regards to what he thinks Italian football needs to do to revive itself. And he talks about the sort of things that they ought to be teaching, how they ought to be handling the academies, how they ought to teach football to their players, and things like that. So there's plenty of things that he does talk about in that 900-page document, and that is Roberto Baggio. And that was in the aftermath of Italy failing to qualify out of the group stages at that edition of the 2010 World Cup that was hosted in South Africa, famously remembered for perhaps the exponential use of vuvuzelas in that edition. For those of you that care to remember, I remember the opening game was between South Africa and Mexico. Then Shabalala goes and scores that beautiful, beautiful goal. I think that opening game ended 1-1, and things like that. So fast forward, like I said, you go to the 2014 World Cup. They still did not make it out of the group stage because they were in Group D with Costa Rica, with Uruguay, and Italy. Sorry, yes, Italy and England. They were in the same group. At that time, England finished bottom of that table. They finished bottom of that. Fast forward at the 2018 World Cup, England were playing, I think, in the semifinals. They got knocked out by, was it Croatia? I stand to be corrected. And then in the last edition, in the 2022 World Cup, they reached the quarterfinals. They have played two finals of the Euros. That's 2020, the edition that was played in 2021, and then in the 2024 Euro edition. How come that England have at least gotten themselves back to competitiveness? Yet in the 2014 World Cup, they finished bottom of Group D. That was with just a point behind Italy, who had only 3 points, because I think possibly they may have equally beaten. I don't know if they beat England in their work, but so those were the two last World Cup appearances for Italy thus far in the tournament. And ever since then, they've missed out on the 2018, 2022, and now the 2026 edition, all losing in the playoffs. This time around, they lost, I think, 4-1 on post-match penalties that preceded a 1-1 draw in a game which saw Alessandro Bastoni being sent off with a straight red card and things like that. And then, I think for the 2022 edition, I think they lost to North Macedonia, and then prior to that, they lost to Sweden. So, really, when you look at these things, these kinds of performances, you cannot be encouraged if you are an Italian football fan. So that's why I was telling you that when they failed to make it out of the group stages, in the 2010 World Cup, finishing bottom of their group, that's when Roberto Baggio goes back and paints down a 900-page document speaking on how Italy can revive their football. And in those things, he talks about rebuilding Italy's, entire youth system. He talks about producing more elite attackers, reforms in the coaching education. He talks about modernization of scouting, developing, this database and things like that, protecting talent and reducing bureaucracy, all those things. But when he talks about rebuilding Italy's entire youth system, he talks about a national curriculum for every club and academy from the grassroots, up to the top tier level, mandatory training of coaches at all youth levels, focused on technique, creativity, and dribbling, as well as individual skill, eliminating the obsession with early tactics and systems. And to the best of my knowledge, football at the early stages, in as far as academies are concerned, has everything to do with kids having fun, self-expression, go and play, it's about kids out there expressing themselves. At that stage, at the very young age, we are yet to self-discover or self-actualize in the sense of where we think we are well suited to play. When you're a kid in the academy or those very junior years, if you're put in goal, you play there. Of course, most kids do not want to play the goalkeeping position. But if you're played there, you will play there. If you're told you're going to be a striker, you will play striking. If you're going to be a winger, you will play as a winger. If you're a midfielder, you will play that. In other words, you're that versatile because it's about fun. And then slowly by slowly or gradually, we begin identifying this one is good at dribbling. This one has a bit of energy and physique, bullies his friends off the ball, and then you begin identifying, this one is a good pass of the ball. Maybe he's suited to the midfield. And maybe the way this one tackles, maybe he could qualify for a defender and things like that. Because even post-academy level, players still get changed in positions. Robin Van Persie went from being a winger, quote unquote, in a traditional 11 kind of style, into being a striker. Thierry Henry. You've had Kolo Touré, was apparently a striker, was supposed to be a striker, but then he ended up being a defender. Why? Arsene Wenger, that's what he saw in him. So Italy as a country ought to go back to Italy as a country ought to go back to the drawing board and find solutions for their game, not just because of what has happened, but because it's become a trend. Because the first time of it happening in 2018, you could say, oh, yeah, just, bad luck, mishaps, can happen to anyone. Second time, coincidence, really? Now, it's a pattern because it's 3 times in a row, So, apologies. I'm trying to respond to one of the service providers having a message through. Hi, John. Good to have you on the podcast. So, really, that's what I can say about Italian football after missing out on the World Cup. Now, staying with the World Cup a bit, in a way. Meanwhile, guys, we have some unfortunate news in the country, in Uganda, because a former sports journalist, pundit, commentator in Alan Sekamate has passed on today. I know he's unknown to many of you, so it's not perhaps news that you may relate with, but all I can say is he was a prominent figure growing up for us who are interested in football. He featured quite greatly, in the sense of we who followed the game. He did his analysis and stuff like that. So yeah, that's the unfortunate news coming in at the moment. But may his soul rest in peace. I will dedicate a few seconds of silence to honor his name. That's Alan Sekamate. Maybe people like John, he's known to you, other regulars on the channel and semi-regulars, those that do relate with the Ugandan society, will know who the person I'm talking about in Alan Sekamate. He did work with broadcasters like WBS. I think at some point he had a stint with NBS TV. So really, not very, very good news coming through there. So maybe 5 seconds of silence in his honor. Thank you. May his soul rest in peace. That's Alan Sekamati for you. Okay, still staying with the World Cup. According to England team manager or head coach, that's Thomas Tuchel, ex-Borussia Dortmund, Chelsea, Bayern Munich, PSG gaffer. Thomas Tuchel says he cannot guarantee that Phil Foden will be at a World Cup. So he's cast that over his potential or possibility of being at the FIFA World Cup come when the final squad will be announced. He's given him the opportunity, if we are being honest. Him and Cole Palmer, they featured well, especially in the last 2 friendlies against Japan, which they lost by 1-0, and then they 1-1 draw against Uruguay. That was last week. So he was speaking and he said Phil was excellent in the camp. Excuse me. Phil was excellent in the camp, but he struggles to show it on the pitch. It's not a guarantee he will come. In other words, he's not one of the core team players that is identified that for as long as they are fully fit, they will be part of his squad at the World Cup. So The Manchester City playmaker, 10 attacking midfielder, cam winger, has sort of struggled for form in the last 2 seasons because we remember, I think he had a good season, 2022, 2023, and then 2023, 2024. But last season, things did not go his way. This season, we had flashes of brilliancy from him. He had a bit of a spell where he was in good shape and good form, in high spirit, scoring goals. You remember he scored a brace against Leeds United as Manchester City beat them by 3-2 at the Etihad Stadium in the Premier League and things like that. So, but overall, in the grand scheme of things, he's not had a great season. So he leaves a lot to be desired. When you watch him, you do wonder whether he is the sort of number 10 that you'd want your team to have in as far as Foden is concerned. And we also know for a fact that Thomas Tuchel told the world that that unfortunately Phil Foden, Morgan Rogers, and Jude Bellingham cannot play in the same team because it does not offer them the sort of balance that they would want or need. Then, in as far as Phil Foden is concerned, in the Premier League, at least this season, he's made 26 appearances, scored 7 goals, and provided 3 assists. Of course, you'd expect much, much more from him. He's no longer young. He should be in his prime. You know, he's 25 now. You know, he's 25. He's no longer posting the kinds of numbers that ordinarily you'd want from a player of his caliber. You know, you can always demand more from him. You know, so I think Thomas Tuchel is right to say they cannot guarantee anything. They cannot really guarantee anything. So we're talking about a player who already has about 218 appearances, scored 68 goals, provided 31 assists. That's what? A 99 goal involvement? Yes, 99 goal involvement. He's 1 goal contribution away from a centurion of goal contributions in as far as you know, things go. But you go back to that season of 2022-2023, he scored 11 goals, provided 5 assists. That was, you know, a 16-goal involvement. Then the season subsequent to that, which is the 2023-2024 campaign, and that's when he sort of blossomed in 35 appearances because he was really scintillating in that season. In 35 appearances, he scored 19 goals and provided 8 assists. That's why we expect more from him because he's shown us previously that he is capable of hitting those kinds of numbers and perhaps more, you know. In that season alone, he had a 27-goal involvement. What's happened to him over these last 2 seasons is not something that you can explain because last season, which was 2024-2025, he made 28 appearances, he scored 7 goals and provided only 2 assists. In other words, he had a 9-goal involvement. Of course, by measure of what he's done this season thus far, is that he has added 1 extra compared to what it was last season. But he needs to sort of wake up. If we are back in 2023-2024 campaign, would be making a different case for him. You know, I think it would be a no-brainer that he would be part of that team. And when he is in his stride, I do not think there's a lot of number 10s that can better him. You know, that's how good he is. But unfortunately, at the moment, Thomas Tuchel cannot guarantee that he will be a part of the England squad, you know, going into the World Cup 2026. So we'll leave that at that in as far as, but I've seen senses of frustrations from English football fans and minders. Some are frustrated by what they believe is a poor style of play from Thomas Tuchel. I think players are not being too direct enough. Sometimes they do not move the ball quick enough and things like that, you know. So, and because they've struggled in these 2 friendlies, even though I, for one, I do not want to read too much into them. Why? Because that wasn't their core squad, you know. It's not that's not the starting 11. that you're going to see in the summer. In the summer, you're going to see Elliot Anderson perhaps playing alongside Declan Rice. Maybe you'll see Ebelechi Eze in the 10 or in the left. Maybe Morgan Rogers in there, then a Hurricane leading the lines. Maybe they will opt for a Dominic Calvert-Lewin or a Danny Welbeck ahead of the likes of Dominic Solanke. I do not know. So at least they promise that they will look much better, or you will see a different team going into the World Cup. Hi, JFT. Hello to you too. How are you doing, my brother? On this side, I'm doing all right. I hope you're having a wonderful day to yourself. How have you been? It's been a minute. You had skipped, I think, the last couple of days, if I'm not mistaken. I stand to be corrected if I am, but I hope you're doing okay. What is what is holding back? What is holding Uganda back in terms of what? In terms of football? Are you meaning politically, economically? What are you trying to refer to? What is holding Uganda back? Oh, in terms of football, a lot of things. When you talk about Ugandan football, as we speak, referees are being suspended left, right, and center. Some are, they've been placed on 3-month suspensions. They have to go into refresher training. You've had the players apparently being handed 5-year bans and due to involvement in match fixing and things like that. So, however, we are making some strides in the right direction in terms of developing our football infrastructure. We just had last year the completion of the construction of the Hoima City Stadium. You can Google it; you'll see the beautiful photos. However, CAF have said that the facility is wanting of the capabilities of hosting a tournament the size of CAF. Why? Because the size of AFCON 2025, the media tribune is not big enough. The referees' dressing rooms are not big enough. The dressing rooms for the players are not sizable enough. So it appears that some bit of restructuring needs to be done. Then the demarcations in regards to VIP, VVIP, and then the ordinary stands and things like that. And then where the dugout is placed, I think they need to dig and sort of sink it in the ground a little bit, because fans that sit directly behind the dugout do not have clear visibility of the turf. So those are some of the recommendations from CAF that Uganda needs to work on. But in terms of infrastructure, there's the ongoing construction of the John Akibwa Stadium in Lira City. So that one is also ongoing. I think works, around 40% complete or thereabout. Then we are having the refurbishment of Nambole Stadium, phase 2, which is the national stadium, and things like that. At club level, we still have our struggles in terms of the Uganda Premier League, and things like that. But yeah, we have room for improvement. You say there must be reforms in Ugandan football. Those reforms, will come. They have already come. Although at the start of the season, the Federation President, that's Engineer Moses Magogo, wanted to force a new league format onto these Premier League teams. He wanted them to play in a 3-phased kind of league format, where you would play the first round of the Premier League, the way you see the UEFA Champions League kind of around, the league phase kind of, and then because it's a 16-team league, the top 8 would go into Group A, and then the bottom 8 would go into Group B, sort of, and then at the second phase, they play each other at a round robin, and then the top 6 from Group A go to third round, and then teams that finish, I think, 6th, from 11th and below go to round 3 to also play and sort of in a single leg fixture to determine who gets relegated, who gets promoted from the big league side. And then on the other Group A, at the third phase, you'd have the top 6 go to the third round and play a single run sort of fixture, and whoever finishes top emerges a champion. So it was, I don't want to say it was complicated, but it was an idea that he just wanted to throw onto, Ugandan football without having it tested anywhere. So eventually he was forced to hold back his, thoughts and stuff. and he was taken for testing in the Kampala Regional League. I do not know how it is performing, but all the incentives that he had promised will come with it have never borne fruit. So, indeed, we will need some reforms. Now, away from the shenanigans of Ugandan football, why doesn't Museveni do anything to reform the Football Federation? Well, because perhaps because one, governments are not allowed to interfere in the administration of football matters and things like that. FIFA does not like that. It would get your country banned if it was believed that you had political interference in the day-to-day in the running of affairs of the game. But also his knowledge about the misfortunes or the shenanigans that are going in around Ugandan football, I would want to believe is quite very minimal. He appears to follow a lot more if the Uganda Cranes are playing and things like that. So yeah, that's what I can say about that. Then now, according to ESPN, Neymar is not expected to be called up to Brazil's World Cup squad. I mean, I must say that does sound very, very unfortunate, because we're talking about Brazil's all-time goal scorer. That's the national team. We're talking about one of the best 10s that we have seen in the recent past. And whereas he is no longer the name of 2015, the name of 2017, and henceforward, I think he would give you that bit of a threat, and opponents knowing that he is out there, whether you bring him off the bench, whether he's starting, he would sort of, yeah, he still has that fear factor about him. He can't dribble. He's no longer as athletic as he used to be, but the agility has not gone away. So I, for one, having watched Brazil a couple of times and looked like they are devoid of a number 10, that sort of traditional 10 that would play behind the striker and make things happen for the striker, I think they could use a player of his qualities. But yeah, the decision is for Carlo Ancelotti to make, to decide whether, if he's fully fit, maybe he gets a last-minute call to join the contingent or otherwise. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that front of Neymar Santos Jr. But according to ESPN, he is not expected to be part of the Brazil national team squad. You look at that team: Luis Enrique, Joao Pedro, Matheus Cunha, Richarlison. Sometimes if he's summoned, you look at Andre Santos, Bruno Guimaraes, Jolinton, Danilo. You look at that team as very, very wanting. Enrique, Rafinha, of course, suffered a hamstring injury when he featured in that 2-1 defeat against France in the international friendly recently. So, you know. But overall, for me, I do believe that you can never count off Brazil, but I think Neymar is a kind of player that you can accommodate in that squad. He comes with a bit of experience. He has the passion for the national team, so you cannot question that. However, I'm not saying he'll be summoned because he has passion. No. It should be merited in some form or shape, you know, that he qualifies to be there, you know, that he merits to be there. But yeah, I think Carlo Ancelotti will have something to think about as he makes up his mind for the final squad. You know, when the Brazil national team is being read out in regards to players that have been summoned to the team, it's more like a country literally reading its national budget. It's a national event. People sit on TVs and wait to hear the names of the stars they admire, their sons, whether they've made it, and things like that. So, you know, it's that big a deal. Anyways, let's move on to Tottenham Hotspurs. Now, Roberto De Zerbi has arrived at Tottenham Hotspurs. Yes, looks like the Italian gaffer is gotten his paperwork in terms of work permits, and therefore work will start effective immediately, and things like that. So now we've spoken about Roberto De Zerbi. The task is simple: help Tottenham survive relegation. That's the task at hand. He has to do whatever it takes to ensure that they do not get relegated. Nonetheless, even though I believe he will steer them to safety, I was today part of a forum, and somebody submitted and said that Tottenham need their own rude awakening the same way Newcastle got theirs, when they got relegated not too long ago. So, I mean, if they got relegated, they would have had it coming, because we're talking about a team that finished 17th last season on the Premier League table, having lost 22 Premier League games, only that the teams below it were far worse. That by the time it got worse for Tottenham, those teams below him could no longer even play catch up, However, this season is a bit different. He comes in at the club at the time when Tottenham Hotspurs are only 1 point above the relegation zone. That's a point above above West Ham United, and they are at 30 points. They need to win at least 4 games out of the 7 games. That gives them roughly about 12 points, which would take them to about 42 points, possibly for them to survive relegation. And the beauty of it is that some of these relegation battle opponents, they have to play Wolverhampton Wanderers at some point. They have to play, I think, Leeds United. Yes, whereas Leeds United is above them, it's not too far out. They're only above them by 3 points, And so you're going to have that. So the question is, will he be able to steer them to safety? His first task will guide his team in a trip away to the Stadium of Light against Sunderland. That will be on April the 12th. And then after that, he will visit his former bosses at Brighton and Hove Albion before an away fixture after going to the Stadium of Light, he will return home at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium to host his former bosses of Brighton and Hove Albion before making the trip away to Molineux, and then they play away to Aston Villa before returning home to play Leeds. They have a game against Chelsea, and what's their final game of the season? Is it against West Ham? I don't remember exactly, but those will be his responsibilities. First of all, today being April 1st, and his next game coming on April 12th, at least he has a period of 10 days. 10 days, if he hasn't officially already started, to undertake his first training session, to speak to those players, to try and motivate them, to try and see if he can give the team a little bit of a structure, because you do not want to disrupt so much. You do not want to give them too much information. It may end up working against them. It may end up not helping them. So he needs to manage this period quite carefully. Like I keep saying, the beauty for him, or the biggest advantage for him, is that his team has only 1 game to play every single other week. And he's coming at a time when he has a 10 days of a head start before he takes charge of his first game. So within those 10 days, even though they are nowhere near the equivalent of a preseason, there are things that you can teach. There are basics that you can draw on. First of all, you go through your video analysis and say, okay, look at this shambolic moment of defending, look at this pattern of movement. Let's do this. When the ball is here, move like this. We're going to play a bit solid, or we're going to be a bit more conservative, or play on the counter-attack, or we're going to go for quick transitions, or we're going to go for long balls, whichever the strategy he may choose to deploy. It will need to work, and work fast, because the last thing you want is for you to lose the dressing room just as soon as you put your foot forward. And if, let's say, he walks in and they can't win their first 3 games, that's going to be a huge blow, because suddenly maybe West Ham on the other side have won and they're already above you. In fact, by the time they get to play their game on Sunday against Sunderland, West Ham would have already played their game, because West Ham will play on Friday, the 10th of April, at home against Wolverhampton Wanderers, a team they lost to in the first leg by 3-0. So if West Ham were to emerge out of that game as victors or triumphant, it would mean that then Tottenham, by the time they go away to the Stadium of Light, they would be already 2 points behind. They would have already slipped to 18th place on the Premier League table, So that wouldn't be a good sign, That wouldn't be a good sign. So it's not something that you'd want to see, or it's not something that you'd want to have, really. And it's not an easy period, by the way. It's not an easy period because, like I said, you're going to handle a team that is very, very low on confidence. And that, I think that sort of poor confidence or lack of confidence is not just from this season. For a good number of those players, they do have the memories from last season. Whereas it ended on a good note with them winning the UEFA Europa League title, a part of them remembers that they lost 22 Premier League games last season and that they were lucky to get away with it, to avoid relegation, So you have that. Somebody keeps saying they are so used to losing that they no longer fear it. They're not afraid of losing a game of football. Now, Roberto De Zerbi is a kind of manager that is a bit of a hothead, for lack of a better word. Now, already walking into that dressing room, he has some figures to tame. People like Christian Romero, who every now and then would want to attack the club owners with social media messages, speak perhaps out of tone in a way, and things like that. His discipline on the pitch is very, very wanting, oftentimes getting red cards, So you need to work out of that. He needs to find a way of improving Mick van der Ven's 1v1 sort of defending. He's going to have a lot of work to do. But if they eventually stay, then we'll look forward to having the conversation as regards to how their summer should look like and things like that. But until then, like I said, that idea of playing only one game every weekend or every single week is good for him. It's good for him as an interim manager because it gives you a little bit of leg room in terms of managing or taking players through certain drills and stuff like that. Because contrary to the likes of Liam Rossignol, because Liam Rossignol walked through the doors at Chelsea, and as soon as he walks in, it's game after game, game after game. It's a constant iteration. Because you play weekend, midweek, weekend, midweek. Literally on average, you're playing 3 games every week. So and things like that. So eventually, they can't take a toll on you, but advantageously for Tottenham Hotspurs, they're in the same boat with the likes of Manchester United, with the likes of AFC Bournemouth, with the likes of Wolverhampton Wanderers, West Ham United, Burnley, Fulham, Brighton and Hove Albion, name it all. Why? Manchester, they're nowhere near European football, not in the UEFA Conference League, not in the UEFA Europa League, not in the Champions League, not even in an idealized future UEFA competition, So with that, it's a blessing in disguise for them because they really, really need that time to work on their craft, And I'm here thinking to myself, maybe if it wasn't for for Bruno Fernandes, who knows where Man United will be. Michael Carrick has walked through the doors at Old Trafford and has gotten the team firing, so much so that we did report yesterday. Was it yesterday or the other day? The other day, I think that was on Monday, in a video that we did publish on Monday, we talked about Michael Carrick being in pole position to take on the Manchester United job permanently. And Ineos are increasingly growing confident in his abilities. They like his style, his sort of man management in terms of squad and things like that. So yeah, we did publish that video, I think, on March the 30th. So please go ahead and watch it and give us your thoughts about what you feel about Michael Carrick possibly being handed the keys to the kingdom of Manchester United. Then also today we did publish a video asking the question or attempting to answer a question of who deserves the PFA Player of the Year award for this season 2025-2026, and we give you 6 candidates who we think should be primo contenders. Then also the appointment of De Zerbi, there's an exclusive video about it. You can go over there to the channel and explore it and watch that. So really, there's a lot of content under the video section, at least that has come through in recent times. Because if I do look back at my March catalog, it's richer than any other month this year or even last year in terms of the videos. So, and then tomorrow there's one I'm hoping that we'll have to shoot, and then possibly it comes out tomorrow or on Friday. But I'm really hoping that I can find the leg room to do it tomorrow. So yeah, okay. So that's Roberto De Zerbi. He's a bit of a hothead. He's been known to get into altercations or snaffles with his players and things like that. So it's something that people like Cristiano Romero will have to think about. He's not been at a club in recent times for even 2 years plus, and yet he's been handed a 5-year contract plus about 8 months thereabout plus, so huge salary, huge bonuses. Should he get them running and going? That's all they need. Of course, if they do survive relegation, he gets a huge payout. But if they do get relegated, those players take a pay cut and, club loses revenue. I think they saw it as a worthy bet because this is basically a gamble, a bet. You bet on somebody to succeed. And if indeed he does go on to succeed, he saves you a lot of money, because if Tottenham were to get relegated, trust me, whereas they've never been on the bad side of the finances, that sort of trend may begin to kick in, So, and we know that getting relegated may be easy, but rising back again is not always that simple. It's not always that simple. Sometimes I sit there and think about teams like Charlton Athletic. I sit there and think about teams like Wigan Athletic, teams like West Bromwich Albion, teams that have had the blessing to watch in the Premier League. Charlton, those days when the likes of Darren Benty were still playing for it. So you remember Wigan Athletic. It had the likes of Pascal Chimbonda, who then left and joined Tottenham Hotspur at some point. They had Antonio Valencia, that team that were under the charges of Roberto Martinez, who is currently at the Portuguese national team. They won the FA Cup in 2013. They beat Manchester City by a 2-0 the final. That Manchester City of Manuel Pellegrini. But yeah, so going down may be easy, but coming back up is not always as simple. It's not always as easy. Look at teams like Sheffield Wednesday, you know. So yeah, if they stay up, he would have saved them a great deal of finances. Now, moving on, there is a story around the Premier League that they want to eliminate long throw-ins into the box. Yes, those discussions are happening behind closed doors. Apparently, there appears to be a stagnation of football quality in the best league in the world. That's the Premier League. With teams looking to leverage on set pieces, with set pieces, I'm talking about corner kicks, throw-ins, free kicks, and then penalties. Those are all set pieces or set piece plays. First of all, I, for one, have always been opposed to a throw-in. Forget the format of, forget the kind of throw-in, whether long or short or mid-range. For me, for as long as you're not a goalkeeper, I've always thought if the ball goes out, let's have a kick in. And I remember Arsene Wenger suggesting that. Let's have a kick in. Why are we throwing the ball if those players are not allowed to touch the ball with their hands? And I think that thing will come one day. It may not be in my lifetime or yours, but maybe someday that we will get rid of the throw-in. Let me give you an example. If you've been part of Sunday League football, where you know it's a bit of a small pitch and things like that, it's very common on artificial turf. When the ball goes outside over the line, they do not pick it and throw it. Somebody presses it down and begins the play. So those reports are starting to emerge that the Premier League is looking possibly to cut out long throw-ins into the box. They want clubs to score directly from open play and stuff like that. I do have a feeling, with that said, that the Premier League could be looking to strengthen their rules and regulations or laws around goalkeeper protection when it comes to corner kicks and stuff like that. You've seen this happen in Europe, where as soon as a goalkeeper is touched, the referee blows for a foul during a set piece play. If there's a bit of pulling and shoving, they've called for fouls and said free kicks, give free kicks and things like that. So I have a feeling that the Premier League could also want to move in a similar direction, But yeah, long throw-ins have always come in handy. Liverpool at some point under Jurgen Klopp even brought a throw-in coach. When you go back to Stoke City over Tony Pulis, you remember players like Laurie Delap used to throw that ball. He would throw the ball in the box, and then the likes of Kenwan Jones would attack that ball, and So, if Robert Huth was in the box, they would try and garnet the ball. That Stoke City side, I think that had players like Asmir Begovic, the goalkeeper, Charlie Adam before he left, I think, to go and join. No, Charlie Adam left Blackpool, joined Liverpool, and then joined Stoke City. I think that was his trajectory. But I stand to be corrected. So yeah, they are looking to cut that out. Of course, it will go to a vote to the Premier League teams or to the Premier League members, and then they will take a vote. It has to be majority over minority, and at least 14 teams have to support it, have to support a decision for it to go through. So that's the democracy in that regard. But I thought that news is quite very, very interesting that you ought to get to know about it. But I mean, anyway, it is what it is. But where will Michael Kayode be without those? He's been one of those. Tottenham have done it with Kevin Danso. Arsenal have done it with Declan Rice. I'm trying to remember. Manchester United have done it with who is their long throw guy? Is it Diego Dalot? Yes, with Diego Dalot. So literally all teams have copied it. Now, meanwhile, according to Florian Plettenberg of Sky Germany, he did reveal exclusively today that Arsenal are interested in Christian Kofane. They are monitoring him closely. His agent, Eric Di Polo, confirmed via talking Arsenal. Yes, Arsenal's interest is genuine. Mikel Arteta likes him very much. There's contact between me and Arsenal, but their focus right now is on winning the league. After that, everything will start to move. He is a €100 million player. With Kofane, Arsenal will have a top striker in the next years, in the next 10 years. I am not in sync about the sort of the price tag of €100 million, but you and I both know how very inflated the transfer market is. It has that about it. It has that about it, really. So, I mean, the other day, I was reading when I was doing a video about players that could possibly replace Mohamed Salah at Liverpool. And among them, I mentioned Yan Diomande, who left Leganés in the summer to join RB Leipzig, and he's been quite a revelation. I think he scored about 15 goals thus far? No, is it 15 or 11? I don't remember the exact numbers, but he's had really a sort of a brilliant spell with RB Leipzig thus far. So, and yeah, he scored 10 goals and provided 5 assists thus far. That's how he's performed in as far as the German Bundesliga is concerned. In about 21 Bundesliga appearances, and he's caught the attention of many, including Bayern Munich, Arsenal, among other teams. So he did impress Arsenal during their home and away fixture against Bayer Leverkusen at the round of 16 of the UEFA Champions League. That's Christian Kofane, the Cameroon international. So very fast. He's actually called Christian Michel Kofane. Born on 26 July 2006 in Douala. There. So that's the player that we are talking about in as far as Arsenal targeting are concerned. Of course, as we draw closer and closer to the end of the season, you're going to hear more of these rumors. You'll hear more of Manchester United's pursuit of Elliot Anderson, while Manchester City are equally interested. You'll hear a lot of that. You'll hear a lot of that. So yeah, that's what is regarding Arsenal in terms of the transfer wish list. Anyways, guys, it's been close on to 1 hour of doing this. I think we've touched all the topics that we had looked to discuss, including the comments as earlier submitted by what's his name? Oh, come on, my friend. Yes, Yukesh. Yes. So thank you so much, Yukesh. Thank you so much, GFT, John, Goodman, and every single one of you that chooses to be part of this Football Tribe UG community. Those that watch our videos, those that even watch and repeat them, those who watch our live broadcasts long after they've ended. We never take your love and support for granted. We do appreciate it a great deal. Keep doing what you do best and keep supporting us so that we can continue to grow on this channel, on this forum. We have about 4,000 subscribers. Do not just stop at subscribing. When you subscribe, turn your notification bell on. Once the content comes out, make sure you do watch it, and do all those things to help support our content. Like, comment, share. The more you do those things, the more our content gets recommended to other persons with similar interests. So allow me to wrap it up here, and I wish you a blessed rest of the night until tomorrow morning. Let's do this again tomorrow morning as we start to look forward to what's to come in as far as the weekend is concerned. Stay blessed, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye for now.